Ladies and gentlemen,
in the metaphor, I compare who you really are, the infinite being that you really are, to the sun. Whenever we think of the sun, we think instantly of huge amounts of power and light and heat. And so it's a great metaphor for the power and presence of who you really are. Now, from that infiniteness, as we discussed, we created the illusion of this physical universe as a playing field on which we could play the human game. And then, in order to make phase one of the human game work, we had to create a solid, dense cloud cover, which is the whole process of convincing ourselves that the illusion is real and that we are the opposite of who we really are within it. So we create this solid, dense cloud cover, and I want you to think solid and dense, like concrete or like steel or something. Very solid, very dense, very difficult to get through. And when we do that, everything in the illusion, everything on the other side of the cloud cover, metaphorically, becomes dark and cold compared to the sun, the infiniteness of who we really are. So what happens when you begin the phase two game and you start using the tools is that your expanded self takes you to this solid, dense cloud cover, metaphorically, and says, let's start chipping away here. Let's start digging here. And every time you use a tool, you dig a trench, so to speak, within the dense cloud cover a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. And at the beginning, you haven't broken through. No light or power or heat or energy of who you really are is shining through because the cloud cover is still in place. But you keep using the tools, you keep using the tools, and you deepen the trench, you deepen the trench, you deepen the trench, until finally you poke a hole through. And then some of the heat and the light and the power of who you really are, the sun of who you really are, shines through that hole. Then you continue to use the tools, and you widen that hole, and you widen that hole. And then your expanded self takes you to another part of the solid, dense cloud cover and says, let's start digging here. Let's start chipping away here. And the same thing repeats itself. You dig, 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 dig. It doesn't seem like anything's happening at the beginning, but then ultimately you pop a hole through, and some more light of who you really are shines through. Then you widen the hole, you widen the hole, you widen the hole. Then you repeat this process over and over and over again. You dig a hole all the way through the solid, dense cloud cover. You widen it. Then you dig another hole all the way through the cloud cover. Then you widen that. And you keep doing this over and over and over again until you ultimately knock out huge chunks of the cloud cover. And as you start knocking out these huge chunks, more and more and more and more of the sun, the light, the heat, the power of who you really are shines through. And then you are able to express yourself, the power and presence of who you really are, more and more and more and more, which is when the transformations take place. Each time you poke a hole or widen a hole or knock out a chunk, you could say that the illusion, that the hologram gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and warmer and warmer and warmer. And you have access to more and more of the power and the presence and the abundance of who you really are. And this is what the Phase 2 game is about. Knocking out, ultimately, huge chunks of that cloud cover so that the sun and the power and the light and the heat of who you really are can shine through and transform you and your human experience. Okay, this is the second part, and a very important part, in what I'm calling the sun and clouds metaphor for transformation. It's very important that you watch the first part of the video and this one together. So if you've already watched it, great. If you haven't, please be sure to either stop now, if you can do that, and watch part one and then come back to this, or watch part one as soon as you're done with this so that you can get them back to back. The first part should be available on whatever site it is that you happen to be seeing this. If not, or you can't find it easily, you will see a URL on the screen, and you can simply go there, and you'll be able to get the first part. So let's go back and cover again that who you really are is the equivalent of the sun. infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite joy, infinite abundance, and the ability to create and have and be and do anything, you know, snap of the finger, unbelievable amounts of power. But in order to come here and play in what I call phase one of the human game, you created this solid, dense cloud cover that was specifically designed to block out your direct experience of the truth of who you really are. And once this solid, dense cloud cover gets locked into place, metaphorically, here in our day-to-day lives, in what I call the illusion, three-dimensional reality, the real world as you used to call it, whatever, becomes metaphorically black and white, dark and cold, because the truth and the power and the wisdom and the abundance and the joy of who we really are has been blocked out effectively in phase one of the human game. Now here's the really interesting thing. Again, this is where we live in our lives day to day, in this dark, black and white, cold world, blocked off from the truth of who we really are with capital T's. So, if you're in here and you use some sort of a self-help technique, personal growth technique, manifestation technique, whatever it is, to try and change something in here, you may succeed in changing it, you may not. But even if you do, here's the interesting thing. Something may appear to change in here, whether it's temporary or it actually lasts, but you haven't done anything here. It's still black and white in here. It's still cold in here. It's still dark in here, and you are still blocked from a direct experience of who it is that you really are. Again, you may have changed a detail in the illusion. You may have changed a detail here in the story, but you haven't done anything with this. What you have to do to create true and permanent transformation is knock out this cloud cover so that the sun of who you really are and all these rays of sunshine can shine in and you can experience them. And the only way to do that is to use a specific set of tools, which I've developed. They're not the only tools, but they're the tools that I have developed. But either way, you have to use a specific kind of a drill. You have to use specific kind of tools to tunnel your way through here. And when you do tunnel your way through here, as you saw in the other video, or you'll see in the other video if you haven't seen it, the sun of who you really are has to shine through that tunnel when you poke a hole here. And then something has to change here, and it has to stay changed here. But so many self-help techniques are out there saying, just do this, do this, do this, and all those things they tell you to do are in here, and none of them affect the cloud cover that's in here, and none of them ultimately allow the sun of who you really are to shine in. So if you really want to brighten this up in here, if you really want to be able to have a direct experience of your infinite abundance, your infinite power, your infinite joy, your infinite wisdom, you've got to knock out this cloud cover. And none of the typical self-help personal growth transformation techniques support you in doing that. You have to use a different set of tools that are specifically designed to knock out this very solid, dense cloud cover.